To the average observer, Malcolm-Jamal Warner's final months looked like the serene twilight of a well-respected actor's life. His social media feeds painted a comforting image of stability and joy. Birthday celebrations for his daughter, warm tributes to his family, and consistent promotions for his podcast Not All Hood. There were no ominous signs, no evident distress. Fans who had grown up watching him as Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show found comfort in watching him evolve into a thoughtful father and cultural commentator. But beneath these tender glimpses into his personal life was a much more complex, even perilous reality. Warner was using his platform to issue increasingly urgent warnings about the way Black culture is manipulated, stolen, and repackaged for profit. These were not merely musings on representation or identity. They were alarms, articulate, informed, and pointed, delivered by someone who had lived inside the machinery of Hollywood for 4 decades. Always a reason to smile. The calm before the storm. In one of his final posts, Malcolm appears with a flower in his hair, a tribute from his daughter. He smiles softly at the camera and says, "Just wanted to remind you, as I remind myself, that no matter what's going on, there's always a reason to smile." It's the kind of wholesome, warm-hearted message his fans loved him for. But sandwiched between these posts were deeper, darker messages, statements that question the very fabric of how media represents Black life. Pulling back the curtain on cultural theft. In podcast episodes, interviews, and informal social media lives, Malcolm dug deep into the structural injustices that define the entertainment industry. He exposed how Black creativity, from jazz and hip-hop to language and fashion, is systemically co-opted, sanitized, and then resold to the masses by white-owned corporations. This process, he argued, is not accidental, but designed to maintain economic and cultural power structures that exclude the very communities who originate these ideas. What made Malcolm's critique unique was his method. He wasn't just offering historical overviews or cultural commentary. He was teaching his audience to spot these patterns in real time. He offered analytical tools, dissected marketing campaigns, and highlighted patterns of appropriation that most people would overlook. To Malcolm, the theft of creativity was not a vague injustice, but a precise tactic in a broader system of cultural manipulation. I am tired of running for shade. His final warning. One of Malcolm's final Instagram videos took on an unusually intense tone. "I am tired of running for shade," he said. "And aren't you tired of being hustled and played? Can you tell me the fate of a people who consciously take the bait and embrace the very traits placed upon them by their captors?" These weren't the words of someone promoting a podcast. They were the declarations of a man who had reached the end of his tolerance for silence. He was pointing the finger at an entire system, one that trains Black communities to internalize negative stereotypes and celebrates those who perform them. Malcolm was exposing the psychological warfare that occurs when entire communities are taught to view their own culture through the lens of their oppressors. The sudden death and vanishing legacy. Just 48 hours after that video, Malcolm-Jamal Warner was dead, found in Costa Rica under circumstances that remain vague to this day. Mainstream media responded with generic condolences and muted retrospectives, focusing on his legacy as Theo Huxtable while almost entirely ignoring the radical critiques he had been making in his final months. What's more disturbing is what happened after his death. His podcast episodes became harder to find. His most politically charged statements were reframed as signs of emotional instability rather than political insight. The autobiography he had spoken excitedly about, a tell-all book detailing insider experiences in Hollywood, was never mentioned again. No reporters followed up. No publisher stepped forward. It was as if the book never existed. Not All Hood, a podcast that became a movement. Malcolm's Not All Hood podcast started as a space for nuanced conversations about Black life and representation. But over time, it evolved into something more powerful. An underground curriculum for media literacy. Malcolm was teaching people how to analyze scripts, casting decisions, and media portrayals with the critical eye of someone who had been behind the curtain. He argued that the entertainment industry doesn't just fail to represent Black people accurately, it actively works to control those representations in ways that reinforce systemic inequality. In episode after episode, Malcolm dissected how this system operates, how characters are written, who gets to write them, and who ultimately profits from these portrayals. His critique was rooted not just in theory, but in decades of personal experience. From Theo to truth teller, Malcolm's career as case study. Malcolm's career trajectory reveals much about the system he spent his final months exposing. His early years on The Cosby Show provided him a unique lens on what positive Black representation could look like. The Huxtables were revolutionary not because they were wealthy or well-educated, but because they didn't have to perform Blackness to be accepted. They simply were. No exaggerated slang, no racial trauma narratives, just a family being themselves. This, Malcolm later realized, was an anomaly. When he transitioned to Malcolm and Eddie in the late 1990s, he found himself battling with writers and producers who wanted to lean into stereotypes. He assumed networks would want to replicate the dignity and complexity of the Huxtables, only to discover that Cosby had a rare kind of power most Black actors didn't. Cosby was able to override scripts that leaned into stereotypes. Malcolm, on the other hand, was told to fall in line. His battles with network executives were constant. Eventually, they pulled the plug on Malcolm and Eddie at 88 episodes, just short of the 100 needed for lucrative syndication deals. The message was clear: challenge the narrative, and you'll pay a financial price. Eddie Griffin and the Pattern of Punishment. Eddie Griffin, Malcolm's co-star on Malcolm and Eddie, has long been one of the most outspoken critics of Hollywood's treatment of Black entertainers. Griffin didn't couch his criticisms in diplomacy. He named names, identified patterns, and made bold claims about a system designed to destroy Black men's reputations the moment they gained too much influence. From Michael Jackson to Bill Cosby, from Michael Jordan to Dave Chappelle, Griffin argued that successful Black men are systematically taken down once they become cultural leaders. Their scandals are amplified, their legacies tarnished, and their influence neutralized. In contrast, white entertainers facing similar scandals often have their issues treated as individual failings, not evidence of racial or cultural pathology. Griffin's immediate response to Malcolm's death carried a tone of suspicion. While other celebrities stayed silent or issued vague condolences, Griffin openly questioned the timing. Malcolm had just begun speaking more openly than ever about Hollywood's manipulation tactics and was planning to release a book revealing insider secrets. Then suddenly, he was gone. A trail of silenced voices. Malcolm's death is not an isolated event. Other Black entertainers who have tried to step beyond entertainment and into advocacy have faced eerily similar fates. Chadwick Boseman's final interviews saw him pushing for more authentic storytelling and control over Black narratives before his untimely death. Nipsey Hussle was building economic infrastructures in his community and preparing to meet with the LAPD about gang reform when he was murdered. Dave Chappelle walked away from a $50 million contract after realizing he was being used to push narratives he didn't agree with, and has faced relentless media scrutiny ever since. In each case, their cultural elevation was followed by public silencing. Sometimes it was death, sometimes scandal, sometimes exile. But the pattern is hard to ignore. The education of Malcolm-Jamal Warner. Malcolm's deep understanding of race, culture, and media didn't begin in Hollywood. It began in his home. His father, Robert Warner, deliberately named him after Malcolm X and the jazz pianist Ahmad Jamal. He gave Malcolm summer reading assignments that included Langston Hughes, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Richard Wright, figures whose work interrogated the very systems Malcolm would later critique. By 6th grade, Malcolm's favorite book was Poems on the Life and Death of Malcolm X. This wasn't just a young boy being educated. It was an intentional cultural awakening. His father was arming him with a sense of identity, purpose, and historical awareness that most of his peers never received. His mother, Pamela Warner, taught him to navigate Hollywood without losing himself. While other child actors got lost in the glitz, Malcolm kept his head down, his principles intact. He valued privacy over publicity and long-term vision over short-term fame. Beyond acting, a conscious artist. Malcolm's artistry extended beyond television. His Grammy win with Robert Glasper for Jesus, Children of America revealed his commitment to using art for social commentary. His spoken word album, Hiding in Plain View, explored themes of systemic racism and cultural complicity with lines like, "We used to fight for our right for freedom, but now we fight for the right to be dumb for free." These weren't just songs or poems. They were battle cries, meant to awaken, educate, and provoke. Love and loss. The personal side of Malcolm's journey. Malcolm's personal life remained mostly out of the public eye, but it wasn't without its share of profound loss and growth. His relationship with actress Michelle Thomas, who played Justine on The Cosby Show, was one of deep love and vulnerability. When she passed away from cancer at just 30, Malcolm was with her, holding her as she drew her last breath. That kind of loss reshaped him, adding emotional weight to his public advocacy. Later, his breakup with Regina King and eventual marriage in his mid-40s revealed a man who valued authentic connection over spectacle. He had seen how the public eye could distort love, and he chose to protect his relationships fiercely. The missing book and the media silence. Perhaps the most suspicious part of Malcolm's death is what didn't happen afterward. He had been openly discussing his autobiography, promising it would reveal hidden stories about the entertainment industry. Yet when he died, no one followed up. No publishing house released a manuscript. No journalists asked his family about it. This is highly irregular. When celebrities of Malcolm's stature die, media outlets usually explore their upcoming projects in detail. In this case, the most potentially explosive project of his career vanished without a trace. Conclusion: listening before it's too late. Whether or not you believe Malcolm-Jamal Warner's death was part of a larger conspiracy, one fact is undeniable. His final months were filled with warnings that deserve far more attention than they've received. He was teaching people how to see through manipulation, how to protect their culture, and how to understand the systems that profit from their exploitation. He wasn't just a beloved actor. He was an educator, an analyst, a revolutionary voice hidden in plain sight. If we truly want to honor his legacy, we need to stop romanticizing the past and start listening to the messages he left behind, before another voice gets silenced and we're left wondering once again what they were trying to tell us.